or racist behavior. Like, for example, did you see the story about Pete Edge, Mayor Pete's police department when he fired that black police chief? Because there was recordings of police officers saying when he got elected, Mayor Pete, that the white people...
Hypnotized, I walked slowly towards him. As we left the restaurant, he formally introduced himself. His name was Lee Chaolan.
Excellent. 助けた恩を蹴りで返す。こんなじゃじゃ馬ぶり。
助けた恩？ここは私はなぜここに？
記憶システムがまだ正常でないようだと。
不審者を確認。排除します。
やれやれ。
White people would be in charge again, and they could get rid of it.
Sheesh.
Like, the alternative is and stopping being a police officer, which is a large part of the critique of ACAB people, is that they say the good people actually leave policing when they see, like, the thin blue line, the idea of never snitching on other cops, the idea of turning your eye away from corrupt behavior or racist behavior. Like, for example, did you see the story about Pete Edge, Mayor Pete's police department when he fired that black police chief? Because there was recordings of police officers saying when he got elected, Mayor Pete, that the white people would be in charge again and they could get rid of Boykins, which is the police chief.
Wait, so why did they fire the guy? Why did Pete fire him?
So he claims that he fired him because there was an FBI investigation, but there's no evidence of that.
Pete claims that he fired him just because the FBI was investigating it?
Right. Pete claims that he fired the black police chief because there was a, quote, federal investigation, but no one was indicted, and there has been no statement. So it's kind of like weird that it's lined up.
Sure, so just as an aside, that's not why Pete fired him. Pete fired him because he went to the FBI behind his back without saying anything. No indictments came from the investigation, but his police chief was absolutely talking to the FBI, and Pete felt like he was, now whether we agree or disagree with it, Pete felt like he was so blindsided by it. He was like, holy shit, like, I'm fucking firing you. Like, you're literally running to the FBI, and I just got, like, blindsided by an FBI investigation into my own police officers, like, supposed, like, racist. I say supposed, I mean, it seems like they were. There were a lot of recordings for it. But, like, agree or disagree with Pete.
And furthermore, after Boykins left, it's not just, like, hypothetical. The percentage of black police officers in the South Bend Police Department has declined dramatically. I think it's over 50%, while violent crime has increased dramatically within South Bend. So you've seen.
I don't know if that's relevant to this exact Pete firing, but
it's relevant because they said that when the white people were in charge, it was going to be a good time. They named all these black police officers.
Well, hold on. Pete said that? Pete said that the white people were...
No, hold on. The police I'm sorry for being confusing, just so everybody's not clear. The white police officers that were recorded said on the recording, it's going to be a good time when the black people, when the white people are in charge again. We're going to get rid of this black...
Oh yeah, it sounded like those racist recordings were really bad, of course. Yeah.
Right. And so, like, that's an example where you could say there's probably personal racism as well as structural racism. This is part of the reason why. So the structural racism was Pete firing the black police chief, and the personal racism was all those guys specifically targeting and using various terms to describe black police officers and black police chief, and how it was so fun when the white people were in charge.
Yeah, so I agree that the police officers that were being recorded were probably racist without some exceptional explanation. That's probably true. I don't know. I would say whether Pete's participation is racist, I don't really care as much. I just want to make sure it's understood that, like, Pete didn't literally just fire the guy because other people were racist. It's because he kind of got blindsided by that FBI investigation. But that's not too relevant to this. You're saying that police officers should make, like, do you think that there's like a moral onus on a cop to like quit if a police department doesn't change or whatever? Should they make that sacrifice? Like, let's say you're a small town cop, you're working in whatever, you pay for your family. Do you think that, like, there's bad stuff going on and you can't change it, you just quit your job, just leave?
I mean, this is one of those very difficult questions that, like, I think it's if you're asking me, I would quit. Now, I'm not going to try to necessarily hold everyone to the same standard as me, because I also recognize that people, it's like a coal miner, right? Should you go to a coal miner and say, hey, listen, global warming is going to cause serious damage to the planet, you should quit. And then the alternative job he would get would be minimum wage, and his family wouldn't be able to be supported. It's kind of ridiculous for me to do that. That said, I do think you have to be held responsible for the actions that you take in the system.
What does that mean?
You can't say. So I'll give you an example. So like, if you're a military, if you're a soldier in the army, and you're told to do an illegal order. Now, there are circumstances where maybe you're under duress, and you do it anyway. And I could defend that because of the duress. But morally, the right thing to do is not to do it. Is to refuse to obey the immoral, illegal order. And in our military, that's actually the law. You're not allowed to use the defense of, I was coerced to make this illegal order. You have a moral obligation and a legal obligation to violate or to countermand illegal orders.
Yeah, of course, I don't disagree. Yeah, I don't disagree with that, obviously. Of course, you're given an illegal order. I'm just more curious because, like, especially, I'm reading your chat, because a lot of people in your chat seem to be of the mind that, like, every single cop is participatory in a horrendous criminal justice system that is necessarily racist, and that all of them should feel a compulsion to quit. But you don't necessarily agree with that. You do agree that there are cops that can be not racist, that can join a not racist police force and just exist in that level.
I already
right?
knew about Lee.
Well, I mean, like the original, going back to what you originally asked, which was, if you're in a racist police department and this is your job, should you quit? I think the moral answer is yes.
As a child, Lee
And
adopted
I understand, like, there's realities of people. It's sort of like, what do you think of a scam? Somebody who crosses the picket line and goes to work because of whatever excuse. My personal belief is that person is immoral. It has committed a grave moral wrong.
Sure, but we're not necessarily talking about scabs here. Let's say you've got like Mike from NJ, okay? Mike from New Jersey is in a small town. He just wants to be a cop. It's like 99% white people. Maybe he's in like Wyoming or some shit, right? All white people. It's not really a bunch of racist shit that goes on. Should this guy feel like a compulsion to like leave the force because other police officers around the country?
So no racist things goes on. He works.
Not in his like precinct or whatever. Yeah, no.
I mean, like, this is here's the problem with this.
Yeah.
This is hypothetical. I mean, like, this is not. I mean, I understand why it's interesting if you're talking about the maximalist ACAB position, which I don't hold.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out what your position is, because I don't know if you think that, like, because you've said that cops should be held accountable, whatever that means. You've said that cops should probably quit if it's not too harsh on their family. I'm just trying to figure out what you think is the wrong thing. It seems like you're trying really hard to avoid the ACAB position, but then you kind of are like, well, I would ACAB, I would believe in ACAB if I was a cop, I would quit. So I'm just trying to figure out like what it is that you actually...
That's why I don't want to. That's why I'm not a cop, right? Because I think the system is inherent. That's also why I don't want to be in a position of defending the laws of the United States, because for the most part, they're unjust.
Yeah, but it's not about you, right? I'm not asking you what you.
Well, you're asking. But here's the thing about this is why this question, and I think I know why it relates back to the mind waves thing, because the question ultimately is a question of individual action versus collective action.
Yeah.
And I think if you are upholding racist laws, you should not do that. You should resign your position. If you should be a whistleblower in your police department against people that are doing racist actions. And if you aren't, you're morally bankrupt and you're a bad person.
Well, I don't know if I would go that far, but it's possible. Let's say that you've got a guy that...
If you're quiet to injustice, to me, if you're quiet to injustice, you see injustices happening, and you don't try to rectify them, you are complicit.
So let's say you have a police officer, okay, police officer Johnson has a family of 4 to feed, and he sees some questionable stuff. Do you think the onus is on him to risk his job and say, fuck it, like, fuck my family, like, I'm gonna call this in?
Well, if you believe integrity matters, if you believe, like, morality matters, then yeah, you should.
So his personal principles here, like, outweigh, like, the well-being of his children?
I think you're being a little bit strong. Like, the alternative is if his children die. It's him taking a professional risk to right injustice, and I don't think that's too much to ask.
Well, I mean, that's easy, but that's do you understand?
Many moral systems.
Sure.
So many moral systems say, like, the reason evil exists in our world is not because of the evil actors, it's that good people sit there
Yeah.
as bystanders.
Sure, Mike, I understand, but
you
you
heard about the
understand.
MLK Jr. thing with the white moderates and the bystanders.
Yep, I have.
Being okay with the lack of disorder over positive justice. I'm on the side of positive justice.
Sure, I understand this.
I have a horrible obligation to seek it.
Mike,
And if
I
you are
understand
just
this.
bystanders, you're bad.
I understand this, Mike, but do you think that it's a little bit silly, like as somebody that streams, right, video games or whatever the fuck you do, to say like, oh yeah, you should 100% quit your job if it means standing up for what's right? Like, do you think that that's a realistic standard to set on the average citizen? Don't you think you could draw that line back like pretty far to a lot of different things?
Okay, so now we're shifting. Okay, so I think we agree that my position is, if you see injustice being done, you shouldn't passively sit by. You should actively engage. So we agree with that. My axioms are very clear.
Yeah, I think
Let's talk about what's effective and what's practical for change.
And then to be super
Okay.
clear, I think for the most part, I think I agree with you there. I'm not okay with the ultra strong condemnation and the delusional fantasies that a lot of people have when it comes to police officers. I guess like that makes me like a little bit disappointed. So for instance, somebody, and I'm pulling from your chat a lot here, but somebody earlier in your chat said something along the lines like, it's hard to imagine a single police precinct that doesn't have any racism ever. Like, it's pretty easy to imagine. There's a lot of police officers and police precincts that don't have racism in the United States. If for no other reason, because there's a lot of like 99.999% white districts. You know, if we go to Wyoming or Wisconsin or any other like, you know, super white state, like there's probably a lot of precincts that don't have very much racism, just because there's not other people who can be racist.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, they don't have racism because they haven't encountered a black person. But God forbid a black motorist breaks down in that town. You know, they might encounter some racism, right?
Sure.
And if you were a black person in one of those 100% white towns, you would be probably reasonably pretty nervous if a police officer approached you, right?
Okay. So then do you think that, so I'm super curious, because earlier you said, and I'm just trying to understand, I'm not trying to get you, so you can clarify as much as you want, okay? I mean, earlier you said it's possible that there are like police officers that aren't racist, but now you're making it sound like no matter what would happen, like in any precinct, like do you think that a black person is going to run into a racist police officer in every single precinct in the United States?
No, listen, okay, so here's what I would say. I'm not black, so my personal experiences with police are different.
That doesn't really matter, that's not relevant to
No,
this.
it matters, because
It doesn't at all.
Because they can't, even if there are so-called unracist departments, what we're really talking about is the experience of people who are people of color in America when they encounter the police. And they have an expectation that, like, you've heard about the talk, right?
I've heard about several talks, but I'm assuming you're going to say the one where black parents talk to their children about being careful around the cops.
That's right.
Yep, okay.
And so that's not something that I had to have. Maybe you did, I don't know.
Yeah, my
But
Cuban
that is-
upbringing, you have to be very careful around anti-Hispanic police officers. None of this is relevant though. Like we don't need to appeal to the individual experience of a black person. The thing is that like here's what I'm kind of looking at. Okay, when I do messaging in my forum, when I talk to people, I try to be responsive so that people are taking from me like the message that I want to deliver. I would never want everybody in my audience to have this idea that every single cop, every single precinct in the United States is just rotten to the core. They're all racist fucks. That seems to be more or less the general ideas that I see from the left. It's definitely the ideas that I see emanating from your chat, but it feels like from you I'm getting a very lukewarm, a very tepid response. Where I can't tell if you actually have a position here that's a little bit more nuanced, or if you're
I
just
thought
scared.
mine was pretty. No. I mean, like, I've always been kind of somebody who. We gotta analogize this because for me, it's like I hate to use the Martin Luther King thing, but he said so many really transformative things. Is he talked about riots, right?
Okay.
Like people look at riots and they go, "These are really bad. These are disorderly. Why are people doing riots? This is actually bad for the movement of black justice." And what he said that is if you understand what are riots, riots are the last gasp of an oppressed people who are responding to a system that's just so fundamentally broken that they have a spasm of violence. And it's not on us to look at that riot and go, what is wrong with black people? What's wrong with their communities? What's wrong with their fathers? It's for us to examine the racist policies that happened in, say, Jim Crow America and dismantle them. And it's the same thing with ACAB. Most of the people, especially people of color whose things say, like part of the Black Lives Matter movement or the ACAB movement, is that's a reaction to living in communities that have violent relationships with the police, that have no trust with their local police department. And so when they say that, it's a message of solidarity for people that are under active oppression. So I'm not going to sit here, upper middle class Mike, and go and look at those movements and go, let me tone police you. Let me tell you.
So this is like, hold on, okay,
that's not what I'm about.
So this is a really great speech for when we're done with our conversation. I don't care about.
No, it's not a great speech.
We're not talking about condemning BLM. Do you think I've given you the impression that I think that BLM is bad? Like, clearly I understand where these I don't want to even call them reactionary because they exist for good reason, right? Like, black people have plenty of reasons to hate the fuck out of the cops in the United States. But my question to you wasn't, should black people be distrustful of the cops? I think we both agree on that. The answer is obviously yes. The question is whether or not you can say every single cop is racist. And I think there's an important distinction to be made there. Rather than just the criminal justice system tends to be like incredibly racially agitated, or like it helps racial agitation, is incredibly disproportionate in terms of how it levies out punishments to different races, etc. We can all agree this is true. The question is a pretty simple, like, are all cops racist? I don't know. I think the answer is obviously not. But
okay, so it's a distinction between, as we said in the beginning of the conversation, personal racism and supporting structural racist system.
Sure.
And I would say there's plenty of cops that are not personally racist.
Okay, cool.
But through through enforcing their department's policies result in racist outcomes. I don't even think this is controversial.
I don't even know. Based on what you said, like in a lot of places in the United States, yeah, of course I would agree with this for sure.
And that's but the ACAB thing, like you're saying, Mike, do you say ACAB? And I personally wouldn't, because I'm trying to get actual progressive politicians elected, and I recognize that for normies, ACAB is so world-shaking, mind-bending of a statement to make to them that they're going to rebel. And you know why that is? Because working as a police officer is one of the few remaining jobs people can do from like a poor or middle class background where they get a secure pay, they get benefits. So they probably know some police officers in their family or extended family. Cool. So if I come up to them and say, hey, white person, ACAB, I'm probably alienating people that I could win over.
That's all. Okay, we both agree then. We're both anti-ACAB.
But I'm not anti-ACAB. Well, my point is that's a political strategy distinction. But philosophically, I know exactly what ACAB people mean when they say it. And I think they're right.
And then real quick, so what does ACAB mean again to you, or to these people at large? I'm curious.
I mean, I think the ACAB, the larger argument for ACAB is the policing, the system of policing in America is structurally racist, upholds a racial caste system that disproportionately targets people of color. So if you uphold that system and you support that system, you are supporting racism. That's what ACAB means to me. Now,
but you don't think every cop. You don't think every cop.
Find somebody else to disagree with me. Find someone else who says ACAB and means it in a different way. Okay, fine.
Well, like I'm just drawing from your shadows. A lot of people seem to think that every single cop is a racist fuck. That seems to be like so. There is no way to be a cop and not a racist.
This is the same problem I have with minorities.
Sure.
Is I know you're not responsible for everything your community does, and that whatever some dumb fucking chat says. I'm not responsible for whatever everybody in the chat says. And as I said before, I know what ACAB means. I used that analogy at the riots of Martin Luther King Jr. when he described what it is. A lot of the people who say ACAB has had personal experiences of seeing racism and oppression in their own lives. So I'm not here to pass.
And a lot of people that hate black people have seen personal experiences of black people committing crime, but we wouldn't excuse that anymore than we would with somebody stereotyping a group of police officers. Now, obviously, being a police officer as an occupation.
There's a difference between an occupation.
Of course, there is. But for the purposes of this, sure. But for the purposes of this conversation, stereotyping something from a personal experience isn't really it's not a deductively sound way to arrive at a conclusion.
But here's the thing, Destiny. We have both the personal experience, and it's buttressed by the fact that black and brown people are disproportionately targeted by the police and for our justice system, both from the enforcement side and from the incarceration side. Why do you keep restating
stuff that I agree with and act like you're making arguments? I'm not asking you if black people
because you seem to forgot that you agree with us. We have to remind everybody.
I haven't forgotten anything. So listen very closely. I obviously agree that black people face a disproportionate amount of trouble from the criminal justice system. I never disagree with that. All I'm saying is I don't think every single cop is a bastard or every single cop is a racist. That's what the discussion is about. Not an individual black man's experience with criminal justice, not the statistics that say black people are disadvantaged from the criminal justice system. Both of these things are true. The conversation is on whether or not we think every single cop is responsible for the criminal justice system and racism in the U.S. That's the conversation. I feel like you said you don't think that not every cop is an actual bastard, is a piece of shit racist. I can't tell. You kind of seem to go back and forth, but it seems like you agree.
I thought I was pretty clear when I
Okay.
said that. Personally,
Yes?
there are plenty of non-racist cops, but the structural system that we have
Okay, cool. All right. We agree.
is
That's
a
it.
racist
Yeah.
system. But you agree with me on that?
I do,
So
of
you agree
course.
with me?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, cool. All right.
Perfect.
Sounds good. Okay. So we agree that not all cops are racist pieces of shit, but that the police institution as a whole seems to uphold a racist system in the United States. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Here is a question that I have for you. When you're looking at like a podcast, okay? If you're looking for something like accurate representation, how do you measure if something is an accurate representation?
Well, I think that's actually a really interesting question that would require some deep thinking. So there's two things that we could look at. We can look at what are the demographics of Twitch.
Yep.
And we could try to match the user base with the streamers on Twitch.
Okay.
That would be one method. I think that would be a shit method. Because I think right now, and I think you agree with me, and I think it actually hurts Twitch, is that this is perceived to be a platform for white dudes, young white dudes.
Yep.
And it is very difficult for women, especially, women of color, people of color, to succeed on this platform. It doesn't mean they're foreclosed, but they face a hell of a lot more, like, harassment, negative community attention, and there's a lot more barriers to them succeeding on this platform.
Sure.
And so what I would want to do is I would want to encourage actively, especially if you're on the left. You know, I'm not going to mandate this as a law on Twitch like a god. I'm just saying if you want to be on the left, we should be making extraordinary efforts to bring on more women, more people of color. And it doesn't mean that we're going to get the goal every time, but no, it should be a stated goal of ours to try to platform more people and more diverse people. That's like praxis. We're taking what we believe and actually bringing it into the real world. And when we end up having a podcast that's all white dudes. If somebody comes to us and says, that was fucking racist as hell, or that was sexist as hell, if you had no fucking women, no people of color, now you could flip out and get all cryy about it, how you got called a racist or a sexist, or you could go, you know what, that's actually a good point. Can you help me out?
Okay,
you
cool.
Can make it an effort.
Okay, so let's. So accurate representation. I just want to focus on this real quick. Accurate representation doesn't necessarily mean like a 50-50 split of representation. I'd say we'll say women and men, for example. That like even though women are I think 52 or 51% of society, you don't necessarily have to have a 50% section of women in a podcast for it to be accurate representation on Twitch. Because the population of women here is a lot lower. Now, we could probably agree and argue that whatever the demographics are on Twitch, or especially Twitch politics, we should probably have a greater representation than that to try to not discourage some of women from joining. But it doesn't literally have to be a 50-50 split for it to not be sexist, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay. And then my final
I'm
question.
pretty reasonable on this stuff, which is why it's funny when people start crying and belly aching when they talk about this.
Oh, I'm only asking you questions now before we get into the actual content of what you said, because almost every single thing you said to Mindways disagrees with every single answer you've given me tonight.
That's
So
literally not true.
Well, that's great because
Okay.
I've timestamped literally everything, and we can
Okay,
walk through
can't
this.
wait to-
Yeah, that's fine. So
can't wait
don't
to
worry.
see the
If I have- yeah, I've got
clip
so,
chimping.
yeah.
Can't wait to-
Well, we can call it clip chimping. We got the whole VOD to look at if you want to. So don't worry, we don't have to clip chimp anything. So my final question for you: is it possible to refuse a person of color or a woman on a podcast and not be racist or sexist for doing so? Or do you think
it
it is
really
always
depends.
racist or sexist if you refuse?
No, it's of course it's not always racist. I mean, that would be ridiculous. But it would depend. I think it would be highly contextual. And if somebody is, say, you know, a known scab who breaks confidentiality, and I think that's important to you, right? Like if somebody promises to keep a conversation confidential, and then they go and blab about it publicly, say they leak the private conversation, you would probably think that person you wouldn't necessarily believe their protestations of being a good guy, right? You would say, hey,
whether or not
that guy's
somebody-
a fucking
no.
leaker of private conversations,
Whether-
and he also mischaracterized
No.
what happened.
Whether or not somebody is
That's like
leaked,
the fucking piece of shit.
so no, Mike. Whether or not somebody's leaked a private conversation or not wouldn't really make me know whether or not they're sexist. absolutely not.
Oh no, I didn't. I didn't want to say that just because they were like a scab on one thing, it means they're bad in all ways. But comorbidities are high, right? Like if you are a piece of shit in one area, it's much more likely you're a piece of shit in another. So you get less of a benefit of the doubt.
I guess that's like something that's not even really worth saying though. I don't know. I wouldn't say that like this guy leaked something, so he's probably racist. I don't think that abductively or inductively or deductively follows. I mean, I can understand not liking the person for it, for sure. But okay.
Oh no, I don't think I necessarily made a causal link, but I did say, if you're asking me to trust this person's judgment, I'm probably not going to lean in that way as much.
Sure, that's fine. Okay, so and then the final question before we jump into the actual of what was said. Has anybody, besides Bad Bunny, said that Mindwaves has ran his podcast in a sexist manner? Any other content creator before Bad Bunny complained said anything?
I have no fucking idea. I'm not Mindwaves' manager.
Okay.
You know what? Like, and I don't care who the person was. He said, like, who gives a fuck?
Well, it's interesting because you spend this entire conversation telling Mindwaves that he's sexist, but it seems like you don't know who's accused him of it. You don't know the circumstances by which he has platformed or not platformed people, and you seem to concede that it is possible to say no to a particular person and not be sexist doing it.